Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, as the international community keeps up the pressure on Burkina Faso's interim leader to quickly hand back civilian rule, Colonel Zida insists that that is the army's plan and meets with tribal leaders to push the point home. This as France admits that it helped ousted Blaise Compaoré flee the country. Also, since the military stepped in last week after the ousting of Compaoré over his plans to extend his mandate, protesters in other countries who fear their leaders want to fiddle the constitution are saying, watch out. We head to Democratic Republic of Congo. And in Uganda, one tech startup is a fine example of the continent's strengthening hand in the tech industry. Cola Studios has made it big with a card-playing app and wants to up the ante. First up, the international community is keeping a close eye on developments in Burkina Faso. UN and African Union representatives met with opposition leaders there on Tuesday to discuss options for a swift return to civilian rule. The military stepped in after President Blaise Compaoré fled last Friday. The leaders of Nigeria, Senegal and Ghana are due in on Wednesday for further crisis talks. Canada has already suspended aid to the country, and as others consider following suit, interim leader Colonel Zida promised to hand power over quickly. Now, he's met with local leaders, including the country's top tribal king, to push that message home. Our correspondents were there.
A crucial stage for Zida, Burkina Faso's interim president. He is greeted by the Maronaba, the king of the Mosi, an important sign of respect. This ethnic group represents almost half of the country's population. For centuries, their tribal leaders have been highly respected figures.
If you're working for the people and take the people's opinion into account, then you will obtain peace. We're going to work together so that the country remains at peace. That's what everybody wants.
Tradition and politics are inseparable in Burkina Faso. Naba Tigre is the king's war minister, a symbolic position. But he was also a former MP of Blaise Compaoré's party.
I resigned on the 14th of January. I wrote a letter to the president. I told him how bad the situation was, that the country was on the brink of chaos. Unfortunately, he didn't listen to me, and he headed for disaster.
Since President Compaoré stepped down after 27 years in power, the opposition and civil society leaders lined up one after the other at the king's palace. The Maronaba cannot be overlooked.
Well, it was President Blaise Compaoré's plans to extend his mandate that drove him from power. He's now in Ivory Coast, and on Tuesday, France confirmed that it did help the former leader flee in order to, as François Hollande put it, avoid further drama. Well, Compaoré's ousting has boosted the campaigns in other African countries like DRC, where demonstrators suspect their leader of trying to fiddle the constitution to keep a grip on power.
Hundreds of activists from opposition parties and civil society groups took to the streets of Kinshasa. In the local Lingala language, they asked their comrades, "What do you want?" The response in one united voice, "Burkina Faso."
Kabila will walk over our dead bodies. We are here to call for him to step down.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to feel shockwaves from the revolution in Burkina Faso. Security forces intervened to stamp out the illegal demonstration.
Kabila and his men, especially Governor Kimbuta, have deployed their men on the ground. They beat us up and took everything we had.
Many activists have been arrested, including from the UNC, the UDPS, and from political and social ranks. In spite of the crackdown, Congolese opposition activists were keeping up the pressure. They are determined to continue the battle against the revising of Article 220 of the Constitution that limits the number of presidential mandates to 2.
Nobody can change the content of this article. We are telling Mr. Kabila that his time is up. He must step down. The Congolese people must have legitimate rule.
At the headquarters of the Union for Democracy and Social Progress, headed by historical opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi, activists made a call to the United Nations to intervene in the constitutional debate. Without that, they say it will be too late.
After a night of protest riots, Zambia's acting president backtracked over his decision to sack the ruling party's chief. President Guy Scott dismissed Edgar Lungu as Secretary General of the Patriotic Front after President Michael Sata died last week. Unrest broke out in several places across Lusaka, with some protesters accusing Scott of having acted illegally. Lungu had been acting president when Sata passed away in London and is a possible presidential candidate. Scott reinstated him on Tuesday. Exactly 2 weeks after he started his sentence, prosecutors in the Oscar Pistorius trial on Tuesday filed a request to appeal against the 5-year prison term handed down to the South African Olympian for the killing of his girlfriend. Now, they're calling the punishment shockingly light. Pistorius was found guilty of manslaughter after shooting Reva Steenkamp last Valentine's Day, believing she was an intruder. Aisha Ishmael tells us more.
The state cannot introduce new facts. What they will have to do is they'll have to argue on a question of law. And so their argument will be that the trial judge, Thokozile Masipa, had erred in her interpretation of the law, that she overemphasized Oscar Pistorius' personal circumstances, and that she did not take into consideration enough the horrific manner in which Reva Steenkamp was killed. And with regards to the sentence, the lead prosecutor in the case, Gerrie Null, in his papers in the application for leave to appeal, pointed out at the shockingly light sentence that the judge imposed on Oscar Pistorius, and also said that the sentence was inappropriate. Now, it's going to be very interesting because the judge will have to be objective. She's going to have to look at this application and decide what the likelihood would be of another court arriving at a different conclusion. And if the judge believes that another court will come to a different conclusion, she will then grant them leave to appeal, and the matter will then be heard by the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Aisha Ishmael there for us in Cape Town. A look now at one of the bright sparks lighting the way for East Africa's blossoming tech scene. Uganda-based tech startup Kola Studios is an example of the region's strong hand on the scene, having made a success with a card-playing app.
With a successful gaming app already under his belt, Jasper Onono has joined the growing ranks of East Africa's whiz kids, helping to propel the region into the tech spotlight. Matatu, a traditional two-player card game, has long been popular here in Uganda. But with the rapid growth of the smartphone market, in Kenya alone, 1 in 5 people access the web through their phones. Entrepreneurs like Jasper are building apps that cater to the needs of local markets.
I thought just hit us at, why don't people have this game in their phones? Can we do this game?
In 2011, Matatu was a finalist in Google's Android Developer Challenge for Sub-Saharan Africa, providing them with publicity and mentoring, as well as having their app hosted in Google Play Store and Google Cloud. Now, with more than 60,000 downloads, Matatu's success is the latest sign of the region's high-tech hopes. From the laying of fiber optic cables to popular mobile money systems, East Africa has experienced a dramatic tech hub boom, spurred on by collaborative workspaces such as Nairobi's iHub and growing international investment. Africa has the highest concentration of young people anywhere on the planet, many of whom have at least some disposable income. And increasingly, investors are looking to break into these lucrative local markets.
But if we can have a place whereby somebody can say, when they're listing in the top 5 apps on their phone, we'll have at least 1 or 2 Kenyan or African apps on it, I feel like that will go a long way in encouraging other young people to begin to believe that there is more potential than what they see. We're not just consumers of content, but we're creators of it.
If the future of computing lies in mobile, and the fastest growth in mobile comes from the developing world, many are beginning to look to African startups for a taste of things to come.
Well, African fashion has been the focus this month. In Nigeria, young talent's been putting its creativity into the spotlight. Fashion and Design Week in Lagos. Organisers say it's not just about looking good, but showing the latest crop of industry hopefuls that success is not beyond them. The country's scene's been described as a melting pot of ideas and talent, and Nigeria's forging an international reputation for style spotters. Well, the beautiful people have also been out in force in South Africa for its style showcase, with catwalks in Johannesburg showing off some of the continent's favourite trends for Fashion Week there. Contributions from over 30 designers across Africa. Well, we'll leave you with images of what's hot across the continent, but stay with us. More news and headlines coming up.